Frank talked to skulls and killed his own brother. On the other hand, Holden wanted to spend his whole life protecting children. What made them so different? Why does childhood trauma affect each of us differently? Today we are diving into three messed up teens, Frank and Eric from the Wasp Factory and Holden from The Catcher in the Rye. All of them had childhoods that would break most of us, but two became killers and the other just wanted to save kids from falling off cliffs. If you want to skip the retelling of the stories, you can go to this timestamp. Ian Banks published The Wasp Factory in 1984. This is a story told from Frank's perspective. Frank is a 16-year-old boy living in isolation on a remote Scottish island with his neglectful father who never registered his birth. With no legal identity, formal education, or friends, Frank grows up in a world shaped by his father's eccentricities and his own traumatic past. As a baby, Frank was mauled by his father's dog, Saul, during which he lost his private parts. The attack left him physically scarred and psychologically fractured. At the exact moment his father killed Saul, Frank's younger brother, Paul, was born. This timing led Frank to believe that Saul's soul had transferred into Paul, a delusion that would later justify violence. To cope with his trauma, Frank develops dark ritual. He builds an altar to Saul's skull, consulting it for guidance. He constructs a wasp factory, a sadistic device that traps wasps in numbered chambers, which he uses to divine the future. And he perches dead animals' heads on the poles around the island to act as his private security. Frank's warped sense of justice and balance drives him to murder 3 children by the time he is 16. Number 1, Blight, age 10. Blight is Frank's cousin who has been bullying him for years. He kills Blight with a venomous snake, viewing it as retribution for years of cruelty. Number 2 is Paul, age 5, Frank's younger brother. The two of them find a bomb on the beach after a storm. Frank convinces Paul to hit the bomb with a plank so it can go off, killing the child. He kills Paul because he believes Paul has the soul of the dog that mauled him. And number 3, Esmeralda, age 5. Esmeralda is Frank's cousin. He ties her to a kite which carries her away, and her body is never found. He kills her because he had only killed boys and believes that he has to kill a girl to balance the scale. And then there is Eric, Frank's older half-brother. Once a very bright, sensitive boy with a natural compassion that drew people to him. Growing up on the isolated Scottish island, he and Frank shared an intense bond. Eric was Frank's protector and only friend in their fractured family. Driven by a desire to heal, Eric left the island to study medicine. But during his second year, a horrific incident shattered his sanity. While volunteering at a hospital, he encountered a brain-damaged infant with the metal plate covering its skull. The child, usually expressionless, smiled eerily as Eric lifted the metal plate only to discover maggots infesting its exposed brain tissue. The trauma broke Eric. He abandoned his studies, returning to the island consumed by delusions and rage. He began burning dogs alive, a twisted act of vengeance for the dog that mutilated Frank, and force-feeding maggots to children, mirroring the horror he had witnessed. Declared a danger to society, Eric was confined to a mental asylum. At the time of the story, he escapes and is determined to return home. His chaotic journey is marked by erratic phone calls to Frank and violent outbursts. Eric's madness contrasts sharply with his former self. Once a healer, he becomes a destroyer, a symbol of how untreated trauma can warp even the most empathetic souls. His relationship with Frank endures, as at the end of the book, Eric is seen curled into Frank's lap, revealing the lingering bone beneath his rage. Catcher in the Rye is a story about Holden, who has a nihilistic view of life. Holden is a 17-year-old boy adrift in a post-war America. He is expelled from his 4th boarding school for academic failure and apathy. His parents reside in New York City, but Holden avoids returning home, fearing their disappointment. Instead, he wanders the city alone, staying in hotels and crashing with acquaintances, including a teacher whose predatory behavior forces Holden to flee. Holden's nihilism and alien alienation stemmed from two formative losses. Ali's death. His younger brother Ali, whom he idolized, died of leukemia years earlier. Holden still talks to Ali like he's alive and carries Ali's baseball mitt scribbled with poems, a relic of lost innocence. And number 2, James Castle's suicide. A classmate named James Castle jumped to his death after relentless bullying, an event Holden witnessed and internalized as proof of the world's cruelty. Holden views society as a hollow circus of phonies, adults obsessed with status, money, and superficiality. His disdain extends to peers whom he sees as conformists or predators. This cynicism marks a deep loneliness and fear of intimacy, hinted at through fragmented memories of possible sexual abuse. His 10-year-old sister Phoebe is his only hope. Unlike the adults in his life, Phoebe is authentic, curious, and untainted by pretenses. Holden's fantasy of being the catcher in the rye emerges from his fear of her losing this innocence. Holden imagines standing at the edge of a cliff in a field of rye, catching children before they fall into the abyss of adulthood. This metaphor reflects his desperate need to protect others from the pain he's endured, a stark contrast to Frank's violent attempt to balance his suffering. Holden's story resonates because it captures the universal ache of adolescence, the fear of growing up, the rage at hypocrisy, and the longing to preserve what's good. Unlike Frank, who externalizes his pain through violence, Holden turns his inward, making him a tragic but relatable figure for anyone who's felt like an outsider. So why did Frank and Eric become killers while Holden became a protector? Psychological research shows trauma often drives people towards a desperate control. Frank wanted to control the world around him. Holden controls his fantasy of saving innocence. Frank and Holden both scream, "Life isn't fair," but Frank's response is "Then I'll make it fair." Holden's is "Then I'll save others from the unfairness." Studies on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, reveal that people with 4 or more traumatic events are 12 times more likely to engage in violence, but only if they lack emotional support. Holden clings to Phoebe, his one supportive relationship. Eric and Frank had none. They were both struggling by themselves. The difference can mean the line between destruction and survival. 72% of violent offenders report severe childhood trauma, but only 14% of trauma survivors become violent. Most just crumble quietly. Eric and Holden are mirrors. Both wanted to protect, Eric for Frank and Holden for Phoebe. When Eric realized that he cannot save everyone, his love curdled into madness. He decided to avenge his brother by killing all the dogs, whereas Holden's love stayed soft because Phoebe gave him a reason to care. Having someone to live for can literally rewire a trauma brain. Studies show that trauma survivors with one secure relationship are 60% less likely to externalize pain as violence. Frank's obsession with fairness is a classic trauma response. When life is unfair, you cling to rules even if they're twisted and violent. Frank didn't kill because he's evil. He killed because trauma taught him that life is a ledger. You take an eye, I take an eye. He was just a kid who never learned empathy because empathy wasn't shown to him. Holden doesn't care about fairness. He just grieves. He'd rather protect children from pain than punish those who caused it. It's not a healthier path, just a less bloody one. He reacts this way because someone once loved him enough to let him feel pain without judgment. We all have a Frank, an Eric, and a Holden inside us. The part that wants revenge, the part that wants to burn it all down, and the part that just wants to save someone. Trauma isn't destiny, it's a crossroad. Frank took the path of control, Eric took the path of madness, and Holden took the path of hope. Barely, but he took it. Why do we choose differently? Maybe it's not our choice. Maybe it's who handed us a flashlight in the dark. For Frank, no one. For Eric, a brother who built altars. For Holden, a sister who held his hand. Trauma doesn't make monsters. Isolation does. So here's my question. Who's holding your flashlight and whose are you holding?